that corporate welfare is a gigantic part of our budget, and the subsidies and the giveaways. I mean, they want us. I'm on Medicaid and SSI. I'm a cancer patient, and I make a tiny amount of money every month, and I've paid in all my life. But here's the deal: the subsidies and the giveaways, the corporate welfare. When are we going to have a conversation in America that the Republicans will initiate about corporate welfare? So Ryan comes off, as intelligent and educated and articulate because he's the only one that's not up there spouting nonsense, about the zealotry. He keeps the zealotry out. I'll give him credit for that. But
so we want to now move.
Corporate welfare.
Thanks a lot, Deborah. Thanks for your call. We're going to move now to Dottie. Try once again to hear from Dottie in New Bern, Pennsylvania.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I am 100% in favor of Paul Ryan's budget. I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I see the split between the Democratic and Republicans, but after 3 years with no budget due to Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, I can't logically agree with the Democrats at this point in my life. I'm 71 years old on Medicare, and I paid in from the time I was 17 years old for Medicare. I want to see those that don't deserve it off the rolls, those that have paid in and do deserve it. I want to see them get it.
Well, Dottie, what do you like about the Ryan budget? What specifically?
I like it because even though it's a period of time before we can get back to a balanced budget, he's the only one that's had the balls to stand up and go for it.
All right, and a Republican caller is next, Ann from Belmont, Texas. What's your comment, Ann?
Yes, I agree with this lady that was just talking also, but I believe that, they're talking about budgets and all that, and they're talking about the Obamacare and all this other stuff, and I think that if we could probably cut down a whole lot more if they could take the pornography off the TV, the internet, and all the stuff that's on there, and try to control the alcohol and the drugs. There's so much out there. Even Washington's even involved in all that stuff. You hear so much slander about it. But if they would look at trying to, I'm for helping the women, but all this exposes it, and it's like wrong makes the wrong. It's no right anymore. And they need to control all the child pornography and all the pornography, even the adult pornography.
Well,
and
how does that relate to the budget proposals?
Well, I'm talking about if they're talking about trying to cut somewhere, and one thing I don't like is when they give these free checks to the foreign countries. How is that going to help us? And we're talking about controlling the budget here, and they're giving a free check. They're giving blank checks to the foreigners. That's making it sound like we're having to work 3 times as hard for what we want, and they're throwing it away.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in. That wraps up our calls during this vote. Up next is a vote on the rule that will set the guidelines for debate on the 2013 budget.
On this vote, the yeas are 235 and the nays are 183. The previous question is ordered. Will members kindly clear the well? The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Members are asked to take their conversations off the floor. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the Speaker of the House seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House out of order for 1 minute.
Without objection.
It's my privilege today to pay tribute to John Sullivan, who will retire this week after 8 years of service as our parliamentarian and 25 years of service to this House. John leaves his post with much to be proud of, starting with a first-rate team of parliamentarians who will do a fine job carrying on his legacy. The Parles are the people here who are here first every morning, and they're also the last ones to leave at night. They review every piece of legislation, and they keep us tethered to the rules and traditions that are the House's foundation. In this way, the parliamentarians are really the glue that holds this House together. And the leader of that team is John Sullivan, whose devotion to the House is total, as is his commitment to Indiana basketball. You know, Coach Bobby Knight once defined discipline as doing what you have to do, doing it as well as you possibly can, and doing it that way all the time. By this definition, John truly is one of the most disciplined people to have ever served in this House. He consistently has shown grace under pressure, what may be, one of the biggest pressure cookers on earth. He has strengthened and modernized the office of the parliamentarian to meet the needs of a more open and transparent Congress. John, who was here on 9/11, determined how the House should go forward and has spent every day preparing for the unexpected. In a body where anything can happen, he's always thinking 2 steps ahead, like any good coach. So, of course, John's a modest man. He would just say he was just him doing his job. Like I said, discipline. But make no mistake, that for the House and the people that we serve, he's gone above and beyond the call of duty. John, we're sorry to see you go, but we want to wish you and your family the best. And on behalf of the whole House, we want to thank you for your service. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield to the Democratic leader, Ms. Pelosi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Speaker for yielding, and I'm proud to join him to honor the long and distinguished service of the House parliamentarian John Sullivan. For 25 years, as has been said, he has served the House with distinction and dignity, integrity, and intellect. He has used his keen mind, excellent legal training, and a commitment to public service to make nonpartisan, objective decisions. Always at first in his mind was the Constitution and therefore his undying respect for the institution of Congress. Indeed, through his service and his example, John Sullivan has become an institution himself, a source of wise counsel and parliamentary leadership. And though his name rarely makes headlines and his hard work is seldom noticed in the public eye, the American people have benefited greatly from his extraordinary career. Proud son of Northwest Indiana, John Sullivan was a lawyer by training, a graduate of the Air Force Academy, and served our nation in the Judge Advocate General's Office of the Air Force. He went on to advise the House Armed Services Committee before joining the parliamentarian's office. He would ultimately hold the title of Parliamentarian of the House of Representatives, a post occupied by only 3 others in the past 75 years. Wow, yes. He has been a fair and independent voice, a professional of the highest caliber, a careful steward of the rules of the House, a true public servant. Mr. Speaker, as a point of personal pride, on June 2nd, 1987, I was sworn in as a result of a special election, and I was the first member of Congress to take the oath of office during John's tenure. He will always hold, for many reasons, he will hold a long place of honor in the history of the House and in my personal history as well. In a recent story on his career, John Sullivan summed up the key characteristics of his success. In his own words, he said, "You have to be very attentive to every syllable being uttered and able to think on your feet," as the Speaker said. Attention to detail, quick thinking, staying attuned to the letter of the law, these were the hallmarks of John Sullivan's service. He has left a lasting legacy, and I am confident that his deputy and replacement, Tom Wickham, will continue in the same fine tradition. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of our parliamentarians. We owe a special debt of gratitude and our heartfelt thanks on this day to our parliamentarian, John Sullivan. He has earned the respect and the admiration of members of Congress, and he will be missed. We wish him and his wife Nancy and his children our best wishes for their future endeavors. Congratulations and thank you, John Sullivan.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The question is on adoption of House Resolution 597. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays have been requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is indeed an American tragedy. Too often, this violent act that resulted in the murder of Trayvon Martin is repeated in the streets of our nation. I applaud the young people all across the land who are making a statement about hoodies, about the real hoodlums in this nation, particularly those who tread on our laws wearing official or quasi-official clothes. Racial profiling has to stop, Mr. Speaker. Just because someone wears a hoodie does not make them a hoodlum. The Bible teaches us, Mr. Speaker, in the book of Micah 6:6-8,
the member will suspend.
These words.
The member will.
These words. He has shown you, O man.
The member will suspend.
Good,
the chair must remind members of Clause 5
what does the Lord
of Rule
require of
17,
you? But to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And in the New Testament, Luke 4:18-20 teaches us these words. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and the recovery of sight to the blind, to set the oppressed free. I urge all who hear these words to heed these lessons. May God bless Trayvon Martin's soul, his family.
The member is no longer recognized. The chair will ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to enforce the prohibition on decor. The chair must remind members that Clause 5 of Rule 17 prohibits the wearing of hats in the chamber when the House is in session. The chair finds that the donning of a hood is not consistent with this rule. Members need to remove their hoods or leave the floor.
On this vote, the yeas are 241 and the nays are 184. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is a vote on the motion of the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Platts, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1339 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1339, a bill to amend Title 32, United States Code, the body of laws of the United States dealing with the National Guard, to recognize the city of Salem, Massachusetts as the birthplace of the National Guard of the United States.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 413, the nays are 6, with 4 recorded as present. Two-thirds being the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the gentlelady from New York.
I request the yeas and nays on the Journal vote.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Efficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
Jonathan Nicholson with BNA News covering the budget debate. What's the purpose of a budget resolution?
In its most general form, it's to lay out expected spending, revenue, and deficit and debt levels for coming years. On a practical level, probably the most important thing it does is to lay out a top-line number for the appropriators to divvy up for the annual discretionary spending. The stuff that's outside of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, stuff like that.
What are some of the highlights in the plan put forth by Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan?
It's very much like last year's plan in many respects. It actually comes closer to reducing the deficit, although it still adds about $240 billion over 10 years compared to just simply current law, which would let the tax cuts expire and the sequestration go into effect. The across-the-board cuts are supposed to start in 2013. But it's probably the most aggressive among sort of the mainstream budget plans out there. Includes a Medicare overhaul, includes a change in tax rates, a simplification of the tax system. But even doing all this, it still doesn't show a surplus until 2040. But it serves as a good, as the Chairman Ryan has talked about, is a good sort of contrast to Democrats who over in the Senate have not passed the budget in quite a while.
Well, in addition to the Ryan plan, 6 alternative budgets are expected to be debated in the House between today and tomorrow. What are the ones to watch for?
There's sort of the usual suspects, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Republican Study Committee. Those caucuses usually put out their own budgets each year. This year's a little bit interesting. The first one that will come up for debate will be one by Mulvaney, which is an attempt to put the budget submission by President Obama back in February into the form of a congressional budget resolution, so there can be a roll call vote on that. But the most interesting one to me is the Cooper-LaTourette resolution, which is an attempt to put into budget resolution terms the approach taken by the Presidential Commission back in 2010, the so-called Simpson-Bowles Commission. And it attempts to set up in sort of broad terms, because again, these are more resolutions that kind of more sketch a general outline of fiscal policy than actual specifics. But it attempts to do sort of a 2/3 spending cut, 1/3 revenue approach to deficit reduction. That approach, the idea that all things should be on the table, spending and revenues, was endorsed in a letter to the super committee last year by about 100 members of the House, members of both parties.
Well, the House is spending today and tomorrow on the budget. What about the Senate? Are they working on their own budget proposal for next year? Senate
Majority Leader Harry Reid has said that because last year's debt ceiling deal, the Budget Control Act, set a top line, a limit of $1.047 trillion for discretionary spending for this year, for this upcoming budget year, FY13, that there's no need to do a budget resolution of their own over in the Senate. So he does not anticipate bringing one to the floor. There's a whole bunch of parliamentary issues involved there, which basically, if he did bring one to the, if he did have a debate, there's a lot of politically tough votes that could happen. So Republicans have accused him of trying to shield his members from tough votes. However, in committee, Chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, Kent Conrad, has said that he will, at some point, try to mark up a budget resolution in his committee. So there would be some committee votes. But again, the main thing is the Senate is not expected to do their own resolution, and they're going to be working from a different top line from what from the House resolution that is expected to pass at 1.028 trillion. So basically, about a $19 billion difference that was going to have to be hammered out by appropriators before the beginning of the fiscal year, October 1.
Keeping an eye on the congressional budget debate, Jonathan Nicholson with BNA News. Thanks for that update.
Thank you.
Approved. For answering, present on the vote. The journal stands approved. Purpose is the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material on H-Con Res 112.
Without objection.
Those charts coming?
Pursuant to House Resolution 597 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in committee of the whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 112. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Klein, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 112, which the clerk will report by title.
Concurrent resolution establishing the budget for the United States government for the fiscal year 2013 and setting forth appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2014 through 2022.
Pursuant to the rule, the concurrent resolution is considered read the first time. General debate shall not exceed 4 hours, with 3 hours confined to the congressional budget, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Budget, and 1 hour on the subject of economic goals and policies, equally divided and controlled by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Hinchy, or their designees. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Ryan, and the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, each will control 90 minutes of debate on the congressional budget. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chair, the House is slightly out of order.
Gentleman is correct. Committee will come to order. Members, take your conversations off the floor. Members on both sides of the aisle, please remove your conversations from the floor. Committee will be in order. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with my friend, the gentleman from Maryland, the ranking member, on what's going to be a long day and a great debate. Let me start this debate, first off, by saying this is what our constituents sent us here to do: to lead, to make decisions, to budget. I want to start off by saying to the gentleman from Maryland how much I appreciate the adherence to the long-standing protocol in the Budget Committee on how, while we clearly disagree on a lot of the big fundamental issues, how we've been able to conduct this debate in a civil manner, and I'm pleased that that tradition from the Budget Committee is continuing to this day, and I want to simply say how grateful I am for that. Last year, Mr. Chairman, we passed the boldest budget in recent history, a comprehensive plan to lift the debt and free the nation from the constraints of an ever-expanding federal government. We changed the debate in Washington. Suddenly we're having a debate about how much spending we should cut instead of how much more to spend, how to create jobs the right way by getting the federal government off our backs, by eliminating the debt, and by reforming the tax code so that American families and small businesses can create a true economic recovery. This week, we're prepared to be right here on the floor to take it one step further. We're bringing a 2013 budget, which we call the Path to Prosperity, which does this. It cuts $5.3 trillion in spending from the President's budget. It clears the roadblock of the partisan health care law that is now being debated in the Supreme Court, because we believe that this partisan health care law is the roadblock to bipartisan reform. It puts our budget on the path to balance and on a path to completely pay off our debt. By contrast, look at what other leaders are doing today. The President sent us a budget last month, the fourth budget in a row, which proposes to do nothing to pay off the debt, let alone ever get the budget in balance. The President gave us a budget with a $4 trillion deficit in a row, ignoring the drivers of our debt, doing what his budget says, quote, advancing the deterioration of our fiscal situation. The President's Treasury Secretary came to the Budget Committee and said, quote, we are not saying we have a solution to the long-term problem. We are just saying that we don't like yours. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself.
I will suspend. Members, take your conversations off the floor, please. Gentleman deserves to be heard. Both sides of the aisle, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's recognized.
By offering empty promises instead of real solutions, the President and his party leaders have made their choice clear. They're choosing the next election over the next generation. Our government and both political parties have made decades of empty promises to Americans today. And soon, those empty promises are going to become broken promises unless we reform government. We're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. It can't keep continuing. We're offering Americans a better choice. We're offering Americans solutions. And let me just quickly walk you through just the kind of situation America faces today. This is what the Congressional Budget Office tells us we're looking at: a crushing burden of debt that is not only going to affect our children's generation by denying them a better standard of living, a prosperous future, it's going to put our own economy into a tailspin. All the experts came to the Budget Committee and told us we don't have much time left to avert this tidal wave of debt. Now, what's the rush? Why do we need to move so quickly? Because, Mr. Chairman, every year we don't do something to fix this debt crisis, we go that much deeper into the hole. That many more trillions of dollars of empty promises are being made to the American people. You know, back in 2009, we asked the General Accountability Office, how many empty promises is our government making to today's Americans? In 2009, they said $62.9 trillion. Then we said in 2010, how many empty promises now? $76.4 trillion. Today, just 1 year later, they're now saying last year's stack of empty promises to Americans was $99.6 trillion. It's impossible to get your mind around these numbers. What does that mean? That means if we want our government to keep all of the promises it is now making to current Americans, my mom's generation, my children's generation, we have to all of a sudden invent, create, come up with about $100 trillion today invested at Treasury rates just so we could have the money to keep these promises government's making. That's impossible. It can't be done. We know that. And so it's time to stop lying with the American people. It's time to be honest about the situation we're in and then start fixing the problem. Because every year we go over $10 trillion deeper in the hole. Every year we go that much closer toward a debt crisis where government reneges on its promise to Americans. And the people who need government the most, the poor, the sick, the elderly, they're the ones who get hurt the first and the worst in a debt crisis. And what is the primary driver of this crisis? Spending. What the Congressional Budget Office tells us is spending is on course to double by the time my kids are my age and then double again over the course of this century. Revenues are going back to where they historically have been, but spending is on an unsustainable trajectory. And when you have to borrow that much money, when you have to borrow 40 cents on the dollar, just look at where it's coming from. This is not the 1970s, where our debt was relatively pretty small and we borrowed about 5 cents on the dollar from foreign countries. And it's not the 1990s, where our debt was getting big and we borrowed 19 cents from foreign governments. Today, in 2011, 46% of our borrowing in this country, borrowing that's bigger than our economy now, comes from other nations, China #1. We can't keep relying on other governments to cash flow our government. We are ceding our sovereignty and our ability to control our own destiny as a country when we have to hope that other countries will lend us money. We've got to get this under control. And so lastly, Mr. Chairman, here's what this budget does in a nutshell. It says, let's get ahead of this problem. Let's preempt a debt crisis. And let's do it in a way so we can do it in a gradual way. Let's do it in a way so that we can preempt and prevent a debt crisis on our own terms as Americans. Let's not wait till we have a crisis. Let's not wait till interest rates go up and we're in sort of a European meltdown mode. Let's do it right and do it now. Because then we can keep the promises that government has made to people who need it the most. People who are already retired. People who are about to retire. People who rely on government. You have to reform government to do that. Instead of this mountain of debt, the Path to Prosperity budget puts our deficit and our debt on a downward slope and pays off the debt entirely over time. That takes time. That takes will. And it begins now. In short, Mr. Chairman, if we don't tackle these fiscal problems soon, they're going to tackle us as a country. And the best way to do it is put the kinds of ideas and reforms in place that grow the economy, create jobs, and get us back on a path to prosperity. We believe in the founders' vision of the American idea. Your rights come from God and nature, not from government. And we believe in the freedom to pursue happiness. And that means we want prosperity, we want upward mobility, we want freedom and opportunity. And freedom and opportunity are gone if we have a debt crisis. And so what we're saying is let's do everything we can to get this economy growing, to get people back to work and back on their feet, and let's get our spending under control. Let's get our borrowing under control. Let's reform those government programs that are the primary drivers of our debt so that we can fulfill that great legacy that all of our parents told us about when we were growing up in this country. And that is this: each generation in America makes the next generation better off. We know without a shred of doubt, it's irrefutable, that we are in the midst of giving the next generation a worse off country, a lower standard of living, a diminished future. We have a moral and a legal obligation to stop that from happening, to pass a budget to prevent that, to get us back on prosperity and get our debt paid off, and that's precisely what this budget does. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by thanking the chairman of the Budget Committee for the way he has conducted the proceedings in the committee. and look forward to a debate on the floor because, as the chairman said, we have very deep differences. We do not have a difference on the question of whether or not we should reduce the deficits and the debt. Of course we do. We have a difference over how to do that. And in that regard, Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong opposition to this Republican plan and in support of the Democratic alternative. The Republican budget on the floor of the House today is simply the sequel to last year's plan, more of the same. It abandons the economic recovery and ends the Medicare guarantee to individuals whose median income is under $21,000 while providing a whopping average tax break of almost $400,000 for people making over $1 million a year. These tax breaks for the very wealthy and the tax breaks for special interests come at the expense of middle-income taxpayers, at the expense of seniors, and at the expense of essential investments to keep America strong. This Republican plan will weaken economic growth and, according to independent analysts, result in over 2 million jobs lost over the next 2 years. It rewards corporations that ship American jobs overseas while slashing investments in education, in science and research, and infrastructure that help America grow our economy right here at home. In short, it is a path to greater prosperity if you're already wealthy, while leaving seniors, working Americans, and future generations behind. Mr. Chairman, we gather here at a very important time for our country. As a result of the extraordinary actions taken over the last 4 years and the tenacity of the American people and small businesses, America avoided a second Great Depression, and the economy is slowly recovering. Still, millions of Americans remain out of work through no fault of their own. We must push forward with the recovery, not back, and we certainly should not return to the failed economic policies that got America into this economic mess to begin with. And yet, that is exactly what this Republican budget does. It is a recipe for national stagnation and decline. It retreats from our national goal of out-educating, out-building, and out-competing the rest of the world. And it will weaken the economic recovery by slashing investments to important economic growth and expanding those tax breaks that reward corporations that ship American jobs overseas. Even when we have 17% unemployment in the construction industry, it cuts critical investments in our transportation systems, including a 46% cut in transportation starting next year. As I mentioned earlier, nonpartisan analysts looked at this and concluded it would lose 2 million jobs over 2 years. So rather than putting the economy into reverse, we need to move forward. We need to adopt the remainder of the President's jobs plan, a plan that's been sitting here in the House since September. It's also clear that putting America back to work is the fastest and most effective way to reduce deficits in the short term. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that our weak economy and underemployment is the single major contributing factor to the deficit this year, accounting for over a third of the projected 2012 deficit. So we need to come up with a credible plan. And the issue, as I said, is not whether, but how. And every bipartisan group that has looked at ways to reduce the deficit in a credible way has recommended a balanced approach, meaning a combination of cuts and cuts to tax breaks for the wealthy and the elimination of special interest corporate tax loopholes. And the Democratic alternative provides that balanced approach, while the Republican plan unfortunately fails that test. Instead, their plan would again rig the rules in favor of the very wealthy and special interests. That may not be a surprise, since virtually every House member has signed a pledge to Grover Norquist, saying that they will not close a single special interest tax loophole, not eliminate a single oil subsidy for the purpose of deficit reduction. Not one penny. I agree with the gentleman from Wisconsin that we face a real deficit and debt problem. Apparently the problem is not big enough to ask folks at the very high end of the income scale to contribute 1 penny toward deficit reduction. And in addition to locking in those parts of the Bush tax cuts that disproportionately benefit the very wealthy, they now have a new round of tax cuts that will provide, on average, a $400,000 tax cut for people making over $1 million a year. That's according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center. So here's the key. Because our Republican colleagues refuse to ask millionaires to contribute 1 cent to deficit reduction, they hit everyone and everything else. Let's take a look at Medicare recipients. They immediately increase cost to seniors for Medicare preventative services and terminate the new service, the wellness programs that were part of the Affordable Care Act. They immediately reduce support to seniors in the prescription drug plan by reopening the donut hole. That decision will cost seniors with high drug costs an average of $10,000 over the next 10 years. And once again, this Republican budget does not reform Medicare, it deforms it. It proposes to end the Medicare guarantee, shifting rising costs onto seniors and disabled individuals. It gives you the equivalent of a voucher, but if your voucher amount is not sufficient to pay for the rising costs of health care, too bad. Too bad. Simply rations your health care and choice of doctor by income and leaves seniors to the whim of the insurance industry. And despite claims that market competition is going to bring down those rising costs, the plan creates that artificial cap on the voucher support. Our Republican colleagues say they're using the Part D prescription drug plan as a model, but that has no artificial cap. They say it's the same kind of plan offered to members of Congress under the Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan, but that has no cap in support from their plans. So unlike members of Congress, seniors in Medicare will get vouchers with declining purchasing power relative to rising health care costs. In fact, if you look at this chart, Mr. Chairman, you will see what the current Medicare plan would provide in terms of the amount of support provided by the plan to the individual on health care. That's the blue line. This is the green line, Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan that members of Congress are on. As you can see, the amount of the support, the premium support, keeps pace with rising health care costs. This red line is the Republican voucher plan that caps the amount an individual can receive and goes steadily downward, giving seniors on Medicare a worse deal than members of Congress would give to themselves. Now, Mr. Chairman, this budget also rips apart the safety net for seniors in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, as well as low-income kids and individuals with disabilities who rely on Medicaid. Remember, two-thirds of Medicaid funding goes to seniors in nursing homes and disabled individuals. Yet that is one of the biggest areas of the Republican budget cuts. It takes a hatchet to Medicare, slashing over $800 billion and cutting Medicare by 1/3 by the year 2022. This is done under the Orwellian title in their plan of, quote, repairing the social safety net. That's like throwing an anchor to a drowning person. Mr. Chairman, to govern is to choose, and that's what this debate is all about. And the choices in this Republican budget are simply wrong for America. It is not bold to provide tax breaks to millionaires while ending the Medicare guarantee for seniors and sticking them with the bill for rising health care costs. It's not courageous to protect tax giveaways to big oil companies and other special interests while slashing investments in our kids' education, scientific research, and critical infrastructure. And it is not visionary to reward corporations that ship American jobs overseas while terminating affordable health care for tens of millions of Americans. And it is certainly not brave to cut support for seniors in nursing homes, individuals with disabilities, and poor kids. And it is not fair to raise taxes on middle-income Americans financed by another round of tax breaks for the very wealthy. Yet those are the choices made in this Republican budget. Where is the shared responsibility? Mr. Chairman, we must do better. Let's reject this budget and adopt the Democratic alternative, which provides a balanced approach to accomplishing the goal of reducing our deficits, at the same time strengthening our economy and doing it in a way that calls for shared responsibility. I thank the chairman, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to a gentleman from California, a member of the Budget Committee, Mr. McClintock.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding.